Hello there, Commonwealth from here. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is nearly upon us, and with it we all have hopes and wishes as to what they should fix from Breath of the Wild. Storytelling and interaction with key characters to the plot, weapon durability, less rain, adding underwater gameplay and so on all come to mind in this process. And no doubt, those are important, but I have one that is far more key to the overall feel and experience of the game. Well, that and the future of the Legend of Zelda franchise. A problem that I will share to you in detail after you leave a like, subscribe and press notification bell as we're going for 2023 likes to make this key video visible and bring us past 333,333 subscribers by May 12th to unlock our big giveaway. Now what am I talking about? Simple, but equally complex variety, or if you prefer, diversity. But wait a minute, Conrad in Japan days before the reveal of the 20th Zelda game in 2019, and 2 months after the title reveal in 2022. Breath of the Wild had plenty of variety and diversity, across the 8 provinces that have been covered on this channel as well, the 7 races or tribes still on the surface, wildlife, weapons, and frustratingly for some of us, weather and climate. Indeed, but all listed or mentioned instances here are elements tied to nearly all games in the open world genre, to a bigger or lesser degree, not the Legend of Zelda franchise specifically, since this franchise mainly built its reputation over 30 years on one type of structures of the challenges and threats located within these, namely being a fantasy world experience inspired from our own world with emphasis on dungeon crawling. And in 2017's Game of the Year we lacked the following: dungeons with numerous foes, aka varied enemies, mini-bosses, and bosses. Truth to be told, the Divine Beast did not represent any of these Zelda staples that were either downplayed or completely absent in Breath of the Wild. Hence in 2023, this has in my eyes become the most important thing to address by the time we continue our quest as the hero of the wild on May 12th. And no, I'm not downplaying storytelling and the quality of this one, as it is no doubt important, but it is the variety tied to dungeons or the highlight of past gameplay experiences that needs working. I know most agree, as the dungeon setup in the most recent Zelda title definitely was a downgrade from most of the 18 prior Zelda games before the open-air revolution that Breath of the Wild delivered. It was simply not what we expected after over 30 years of dungeons in this franchise, and many of us veterans noticed this more than anything as we have played most or all of the Zelda games of the 2010s, 2000s, the 90s, all the way back to the beginning in 1986. Hence, when it comes to dungeons, this is clearly one point where we don't want the Divine Beast to become the new standard for the franchise. Or in other terms, machines with identical visual exteriors and interiors of dungeons and a massive lack of enemies within them. The reason I'm bringing the matter of enemies up is that across the 3 trailers we have seen before 2023, so the release year of Tears of the Kingdom, we have barely noticed any new enemies. Just alterations of existing ones and combination of these with existing overworld bosses, continuing the legacy of multicolored versions of the same foe. It goes without saying, the quality of enemy AI was a step up from the series past in Breath of the Wild, but the lack of variety of enemies was a serious concern that we all hope is addressed in Tears of the Kingdom. One way of doing so is to bring back a series staple until 2017, confined dungeon or temple exclusive enemies. In general, the best and more varied Zelda enemies were found in dungeons, and combined with puzzles, they made up the highlights of so many Zelda games. After many years of waiting, we got the open world we wanted, but there was a price to pay, seeing that the so-called dungeons minus Hyrule Castle were empty and filled more by hurdles than actual foes. That was one of the many issues with the Divine Beast, seeing that enemies had to be spawned by malice or be here for 100 years. The same can be said about the Sheikah Shrines, as they only had guardians, seeing that nothing else living would survive here for tens of thousands of years. The lack of enemy variety made the confined interior puzzle sections of the game extremely repetitive, and more so sucked the fun out of some of them. Even so, this wasn't the greatest sin of these locations, as that is something we have already hinted to, namely the lack of variety in the interior design and color of these. As in Breath of the Wild, we pretty much had 2, yellow combined with brown or blue puzzle box. A massive downgrade from Skyward Sword locations in the sky, Asian-inspired water temple, pirate ship in the middle of a sand sea, volcano dungeon, and so on. And even some of these temples were a downgrade from the variety show that was Twilight Princess. Not only that, even the mini-dungeons, the precursors to the underground Sheikah Shrines, were unique and stood out in all Zelda titles, adding depth and character to areas that we on average spent 10 to 15 minutes within. Variety, and once again, variety. How our surroundings are designed and colored has a massive impact on us, the player, when we want to immerse ourselves into this fantasy world. The Zelda team nailed this in the era of the wild open-air Hyrule, but fell short in the interiors filled with hazards. It was just the same thing over and over again, removing completely the element of surprise of what we will find on the inside. Tears of the Kingdom have to fix this, though I am afraid that the mechanical walls will simply be replaced by stone walls this year. We already see hints of this in the teasers, both on the ground and in the sky, and needless to say, this scares me, as Zelda has always been known for one thing in its interiors, having a number of different colors and matching the surroundings of the province or area the dungeon is located. In Breath of the Wild we got none of that, and after the first Divine Beast and Shrine, it was all just standard, bland, been there, seen that. Something we definitely couldn't say about all the prior 3D Zelda games, which just screamed variety and unique dungeon concepts and interiors, not recycling the same design and colors over and over again. And in Breath of the Wild, it went to a degree that the Zelda team finally understood it.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
Addressing some of our variety issues in the paid DLC, the Trial of the Sword for the Shrine's layout, and the final trial for Divine Beasts. Doing something so simple as having multiple different themed areas, and with it you already have a far better experience. The main goal, as we have already mentioned a number of times, for Tears of the Kingdom, being better than Breath of the Wild. And in a way that also involved locking away the dungeon boss behind a big door and gradually throwing in more powerful enemies to block the path. Oh, and the boss being something different than a creation of malice 5 times over. That was the strength of Monkmar's Koshia, the element of surprise and unpredictable attacks. Exactly what Zelda dungeons used to do. This right here, which was not in the March 3rd main game, was a step in the right direction and sign of what we can expect from Tears of the Kingdom. The final trial makes me hopeful, but far more than this needs to be done. Most of all about the interiors, which should, just like the rest of the world, be organic, but also when it comes to 2 additional details which used to be dungeon staples. No, not the compass, but the mini-bosses, which were always a trial on the path to the actual boss. Heck, sometimes these foes were far more interesting than the bosses. Dark Link and Servo are only the most extreme examples. Foes with depth and skill that press Link into a corner. This is the variety Tears of the Kingdom needs in addition to the open-air mini-bosses or overworld bosses. In 3D Zelda games, mini-bosses truly set the tone for the temple and left us pumped and sometimes exhausted before taking on the second half of the temple. And for beating them, there were always rewards, dungeon items which were apart from in Majora's Mask varied, all allowing for solving new sets of puzzles within dungeons or temples, and sometimes even outside of them, which is something Tears of the Kingdom definitely can expand upon. And the second half of the temples were often just as varied and unique and filled with some of the most memorable moments in the franchise, all in the hunt for dungeon keys, boss keys, and additional objectives. None of that was found in Breath of the Wild's Divine Beasts, and we all miss it. So I'm begging Tears of the Kingdom to bring these back. I don't want to only cosplay as Dark Link, I want to fight him in a dungeon either as a mini-boss or boss. But apart from that one fight, I want to face different looking foes, all to keep it fresh. Organic surprise and freshness, the exact combination Tears of the Kingdom, a sequel of combinations, deserves, across the 3 layers that will play in: underground, surface, and most of all sky. The inspiration taken from the Japanese Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples point to that they want to go in a different direction with this game, which is splendid, but hopefully there will be major variety in the coloring and theming of dungeons in this game. And after visiting a number of these shrines and temples myself in Osaka, Kyoto and Tokyo in 2019 and 2022, I feel rather confident that we will see the same rich blend of colors found in these sites within the dungeons of the 20th Zelda game. After all, no Shinto shrine or Buddhist temple is as dull and boring as the interiors of the Divine Beasts and the ancient Sheikah shrines. On top of time reversal puzzles and combat, we need at least the full color palette of the rainbow back with the dungeons both on the outside and inside, as it adds to a richer and more refined Zelda experience. This is a sequel of Souls, and the soul of Zelda lies in its dungeons and bosses. In Breath of the Wild, this simply wasn't the case. But by restoring this goldmine of content and challenges, we will all benefit greatly this year. Now to address the concern of linearity, especially among open-air fans and Breath of the Wild newcomers. It doesn't have to be that way, as we saw with A Link Between Worlds and in some past 3D Zelda titles, that it is totally possible to offer non-linearity to the dungeon experience. But this is not what this video is all about, but rather how colorful, varied and packed Zelda dungeon should be in its exteriors and interiors filled with enemies, mini-bosses and bosses in Tears of the Kingdom, the sequel of combinations, and to be true to its word, it should combine the best of Zelda's past and present to lay out its future path into the franchise's 40s and 50s. You know, deliver the variety that Breath of the Wild provided in its many regions, races, weapons, wildlife, food, recipes, side quests, and so on. And that right there is what Tears of the Kingdom must fix from Breath of the Wild. Do you agree, or are you in the minority that prefer the Divine Beasts? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell to not miss any of our upcoming Tears of the Kingdom videos leading up to its release and far more in the years to come. Last but not least, a big thanks to all of you for watching until the end and to all our patreon.com/commonrealm patrons. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.